Hey y'all, welcome to Cocktail Hour. I am Meg.
And I'm Nikki.
So today, I keep saying we're going off book. I think I've had show tunes on the brain, but obviously we're doing an audio only episode because Meg is somewhere on the road right now. Adam and I are taking a 2 or 3 week. I know it's a very big chunk of time that could be it just depends on if we want to come home in the middle of our road trip. But we're on a road trip, so I don't know where we are. Send well wishes. Check out the IG because I'll be posting all the photographs from the trip. But we got a question in our submissions essentially that said, yo, I've been following the both of you. This person had heard me speak on Jai Long's mastermind call back 2021, 2022. And they were just curious of our photography journey, how we got here, where we started, all that fun stuff. So I thought, what a better time than an audio only episode where we just kind of talk through it.
What was the Jai Long Masters call?
So
was it on that app? Do you remember that app that started?
I remember that app that started and stopped real quick.
It was during COVID.
What the fuck was that called?
Classroom or something? Or what was it
like
called?
that. In the comments, if you remember what that app was called, where you could hold meetings.
Or it was basically rooms, all over this app, little rooms that you could enter into or chats that you could enter into or pop out of. And they were live talks going on.
It's almost like live podcasts.
Yes, all throughout the apps. And some of them were very specific to topics. And some of them were just random or just hangout rooms. It was really interesting. And I think it was really popular at first. And then it was everybody was okay, we don't need another social media app. So yeah, I was curious if that was it, or was it
It was a call, an
a
event,
retreat type
if
thing,
you will. Yeah, like a virtual.
Oh, like a workshop.
Yes.
Okay.
So Jai Long is a photographer. I don't know if he still does wedding photography or whatnot.
I think he does.
But he had this big course, the business map of just helping other photographers and all that jazz. So I had spoke on that, which is funny because I was maybe a year into my photography journey, and I spoke at it and just gave tips and tricks of everything. So this person heard me, hopefully not make a complete fool of myself, and they've been following along.
I'm curious to know what tips and tricks you had a year into your business and how different that is now.
That is such a good point. And you know what's funny? I have the notes somewhere in a notebook. We'll have to do an episode where I go through, here's what I said. And
in 2021.
Yeah, still
my first year in business.
Yeah, do I still agree with those things?
Because I would dare not.
I have all the audacity.
I was going to say.
I have all.
Jai Long.
Yeah. When I was.
Had all the faith.
He did. When I first started, as I was figuring things out, I was like, oh yeah, I could teach someone to do this, or I could do this. I felt good with my editing in the moment. I was like, I can edit people's photos. I can have them outsource their editing to me. And now I look back and I go, I barely scratched the surface of what I know now. And 5 years from now, I'll probably feel the exact same way.
Interesting.
Of just thinking oh, I thought, Meg, you thought you knew everything.
Because you learn so much along the way.
That's the beauty of what we do,
process.
And I think that's why it's so important to remember, you're okay. Yeah, you're having a hard month, or you're having a low booking season. You never know.
Yeah, what's next?
This job, this job that we have, is kind of very dependent on us and how much work you put into it, and different chances you take, and all that good stuff.
Totally.
So let's dive in. Do you want me to put you on the spot and say you kick?
Nope.
You kick up.
Not doing it. Thanks for asking, because I had the opportunity to say no.
I'm not gonna kick us off. Okay, I'll kick us off.
Okay.
So a lot of people are shocked when I tell them this, that 2025 is my 4th wedding season. No, I was not a photographer before wedding photography. I wasn't out shooting families or corporate events or anything. Back before I started my photography company, I worked for a large corporation. I was a manager for a team who handled complaints from wholesale companies. So Best Buy, Apple, Target, if they had issues with their bank accounts, they came to my team. And I will tell you that was very stressful. My eyes were twitching at times because their complaints were not as oh, I got a $35 overdraft fee. It was hey, I disagree with my $2 million wire fee.
My account, yeah.
Yeah, it was absolutely insane. Or we'll pull our accounts. And it was high stress, lots of legal, regulatory compliance, all that good stuff. So that was the job that I had previously had. Then the pandemic hit, and Adam and I were like, oh, well, we want to take a road trip. We have nothing else to do. We had a little Shih Tzu dog that was 14 at the time. And we were just like, we're going to go on the road. And I mentioned to Adam that I wanted to take some quote unquote big girl pictures. And I meant like, think Canon G7X, whatever,
Sure.
like a little point and shoot. And so anyways, I thought of that. And so I was researching, I'm going to go to Best Buy and buy this camera before we go on our trip. Well, Adam and I's 1 year anniversary hits, which is so funny. So we started dating a couple months before the pandemic. So late 2020, early 2021, we decided to go on this road trip, and our 1 year anniversary hits, and he comes home randomly with a Best Buy bag, not wrapped because that's just not Adam, not going to wrap the gift. But he comes home and he's like, okay, well, I know you wanted a camera, so I thought I'd get you one for our anniversary. He pulls out a Sony mirrorless camera.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, what the fuck?
Started big.
I didn't even know what the word mirrorless meant.
Sure,
at
what the
time.
difference was between like
no,
a DSLR.
Yeah, no idea. I open this camera and I'm like, holy fuck. I had such a wave of overwhelm, like, oh my God, there's no way I'm going to learn how to use this camera. The camera sat on a shelf for 6 months.
Oh, wow.
I put it down. I had no idea what I was doing with it. And then one day I just got a bug up my butt and I was like, I'm going to learn that camera. I'm going to figure it out because it would be nice to take it on the road with us. The road trip was coming up. Yeah, it'd be nice to know the road trip was coming up. So I started doing research, and God, I'd have so much more money if I never became a wedding photographer, because I heard one thing where someone goes, well, you need a nifty 50. Have you ever heard that term?
All the time.
I had never in my life would I say that word to someone or that phrase as a photographer that I am now. But
I'm not that phrase user.
Yeah, but when you first start and you're like, what lens should I have for a camera? I have, and I like a 50, but I don't use it on a wedding day.
I've never had one.
I have it, but I'm not using it. So they're like, you need a nifty 50. So that's where my gear obsession started. So I buy that lens, whatever. So mind you, I'm learning the camera. I'm still working my corporate job. I then have a conversation with someone and they're like, well, you should get into wedding photography. I remember this so vividly. I said, I will never.
Do you know who said that to you?
My sister.
Oh.
She said, I have a friend who's getting married and she knows that you got a camera. She's wondering if you would like come shoot the wedding. And I said, absolutely not. I will never do that. That seems like so much stress, what have you. Again, still working my corporate job. We go on this road trip and I just fall in love with this fucking camera. I'm in no way using it well. When I look back at some of the metadata of the photographs I'm taking, Nikki, I literally am shooting 1/40.
JPEG.
Like ISO 2000, 1/40. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how the settings correlate with each other and whatever. But because it's mirrorless, I'm seeing the image in the camera. And as long as it's light enough, I go, beautiful. And then, you get it into the computer and I go, why is this blurry? Like, why is this like not crisp? Well, because you're shooting 1/40, you idiot. But you have no idea. So loving it. I start traveling. This is, again, the audacity that I have. I start traveling and I go, well, maybe it'd be fun to just shoot couples, like travel couple photography. I get my ass on a plane and I head out to Arizona. And I go to Instagram and I look up the location of Phoenix, Arizona, and I start looking for couples that have tagged themselves in Phoenix, Arizona. I start cold calling, DMing people and saying, I'm a photographer. I'm coming to the area. I'm looking to practice. Can I give you a free couple session? And I meet, I don't know, I probably go out there and I shoot with 5 couples, and then I go to another area and do that. Like, I really start to get into it. And then I think to myself, okay, maybe wedding photography could be something that you get into. And this is all in a matter of maybe 6 months. Like, I go ham on this situation. And then I start reaching out to photographers who I had followed, wedding photographers, and I send them pretty, I think, compelling emails for being a newbie of, here's who I am, here's what I know, here's what I'm looking to learn. I would love to just shadow you at weddings or second shooter, what have you. And essentially, since I already had a job, I'm offering to do this all for free. And they're jumping at the chance. They're oh yeah, because they can charge their couples for a second photographer and keep the money and not pay me. So I'm like, this is great, whatever. So I start going to weddings every weekend. So I work my Monday through Friday, and then every weekend I'm either at one or two weddings, and I really do fall in love with it. I love it so much. And I'm trying to learn everything I can. And people sometimes ask me like, "How did you learn all this so quickly?" Because I was very analytical about it. I kept a spreadsheet of here's what I want to learn. And then the next column would be, well, when did you try it? What worked well? What didn't work well? What are you going to try next time? I essentially took my just corporate vibes and brought it into creating the business and learning my photography. Because when you're at a corporate job, very likely, I mean, if you're good at your job, you're good at people skills. At the job that I had, I was not only talking to my team every day, but I was talking to new hires. So I had to get to know strangers and convince them essentially that you should have this job and you should love this company. And then I'd have to talk to people in the company who made millions of dollars and could have probably slapped me in the face and I would have been in trouble instead of them. Yeah. I got really good at just talking to strangers and having those personal skills. So the camera was the thing I had to learn. And then the editing was the thing I had to learn. And so that's kind of where that all came to pass. And then it got to a point where I go, okay, I'm going to start booking weddings on my own. I parted ways with the company that I was working at, and I went full ham on booking weddings, second shooting as much as I possibly could. And that first wedding season, 2022, I think was my first like full solo wedding season. 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025. Yeah. So 2022, I had booked like 40 weddings. Now, mind you, I was not charging nearly enough. Even as for how new I was, I should have been charging more. But because I was like, well, I just want to get these bookings and practice as much as possible, I had these all-inclusive packages. I was charging $3,500 for the following. Okay. Unlimited wedding day coverage.
Hate that.
It could be 15 hours. Unlimited wedding day coverage. A second photographer. Okay. This is back when people charged $25 an hour for a second photographer, which they don't now. But engagement session, 1 hour engagement session.
If you're going to say rehearsal dinner coverage, I'll kill you.
No, it gets worse though. With the engagement session, I would take them out to dinner first. And the dinner was always like $200. It was a specific Italian restaurant I'd take everybody to. It also came with 3 types of editing. So the gallery would be edited how I normally edit it. So let's say 1,000 photos, right? Normally edited. Then the next tab would be those 1,000 photos in a black and white edit. Those 1,000 photos also in like a grainy, filmy edit, right? Doesn't stop there. Then they would get that gallery within 4 weeks. Last but not least, they would get an hardcover like album. After all was said and done, with the money that I was paying out, plus getting taxes taken out and everything, I was making roughly $500 a wedding. How fucking ridiculous is that? Even crazy. For as new as I was, $500 is not enough money.
Especially with how much work you're putting in.
Oh my God. There's not a so much fucking work. I was maybe making $10 an hour, right? And at that time, I've never had more couples meaner to me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it just shocks me how mean people are when they're spending the least amount of money that I think you could possibly spend on a wedding photographer.
Yeah. So talk about audacity.
So yeah, I worked 40 a year, and then I again started booking out 2023, 2024, and then here we are 2025. And I still take on a ton of weddings, more than I think people think I should, but I'm really used to working a ton.
Yeah.
I'm just used to it. That's kind of a comfortable space for me. I get really antsy during off season when I'm only working one wedding a month. I'm kind of like,
what do I do?
What do I do? And it doesn't flow as naturally for me. But I just think if I could give anyone tips and tricks, if you're starting out in wedding photography, you need to second shoot. And you need to second shoot for a lot of different people. You need to see what you like and what you don't like. Maybe even more important is finding out what you don't like. Not only in like posing and prompting, but how someone acts during a wedding day and how they interact with their couple and the friends and family and bridal party, like,
and how they treat their second photographers.
Yes, that's
actually really important.
That is huge. So I just think it's experiencing those, like, yes, you might be like, well, I'm just ready to take on my own weddings. I would rather have you watch someone else learn hard lessons than you have to learn them yourself. But I think second shooting is so incredibly important. And even this year, I am booked out on weddings, but when I see someone who I admire post for like they need a second shooter, and if I'm available, yes, would it be nice to have a day off? Sure. But I'm reaching out and saying like, hey, if you still need someone, like I'm available, because I am really trying to feed into this year, like figuring out or just having more time to be creative and all that stuff and see how other people work. I think that in our industry, constantly learning from each other is really huge. Now, mind you, this community over competition, what drives me nuts is that's all well and good. That party line, community over competition. To me, though, you DMing me and asking me, what preset do you use? How'd you edit that photo? That's not community.
No.
You're just looking for an answer so you don't have to put the work in. And if we're not close, I'm not answering your question. I'm not. You asked me that question. You could ask me for a secret location that I have, and I'm giving it to you.
You've told me being like, I'm not telling you this location, bitch.
That's fair. If you really needed it, I would tell you.
If I really needed it.
But I'm just like, for people in the industry, they want to take, unfortunately, you don't like, or, you know, people don't like this phrase, but like, that's a shortcut.
Yeah.
That's a shortcut. You want the answer. You don't want to put in the work. So when it comes to editing and people ask me that question, I can't actually give you an answer because there's not an answer. I've literally put my whole USI into like really refining. I've pulled from 18 different presets, right? And then I even launched a preset and I started like kind of using something different. So I took down the preset because to me, I think it's so disingenuous to keep making money off of that and making it seem like that's what I'm using when I'm actually changing my editing quite a bit from that. So I took it down because I stopped using it. I don't know. It's just community over competition. I'm all for like, hey, you want to see how I work? Great, come second shoot for me, or be an assistant on the day of, and you can still have your camera. Like, I'm all about supporting and showcasing how I'm doing things, but it's not necessarily just like, oh, you have 18 questions, you want me to answer them, otherwise I'm the bad guy in your story. Okay, well, you're the fucking loser in my story. So bye. I heard that on a TikTok the other day, and I was like, I'm gonna find a way to
funny
to feed that into the pod.
Okay, we're deviating, and I'm gonna bring it back because I am raw dogging my story.
Love it.
So I need to just. You're talking a lot, and I love it. And I'm like, but where am I?
Oh no, my thing is I was gonna give mine, and then I'm passing it to you. You give yours, so mine's done. That's my story.
Community over competition, just.
Yeah, that started to take it off.
Just was tickling in your butthole a little bit. You
I needed to.
You needed to release your thoughts.
That. Yeah.
Yeah. For me, things were a little different. I have always loved photography from a sense of like I've always been a camera kid. So just cheap, shitty cameras, or you know, in 8th grade, you do like film class and you develop your photos in the darkroom, and it's really fun. And I still have those pictures and. I thought that was a really cool thing. So I got my first like DSLR in 2011. I remember this. It was a Christmas gift from my mom, and we were going to Ecuador, which is where my family's from. So I got the camera right before our trip.
Fun.
And I remember that being such an experience of like being able to go not only to like the country where my family's from and where my grandparents live, but like I also grew up in Ecuador for a few years, and being able to those are some of my favorite pictures. Like looking back, there are pictures of like these beautiful indigenous women like out in the ruins, and there's pictures of like stray cats and like, you know, in little indigenous boys walking their cows down the street after school. Like
real fucking life.
Real fucking life in a third world country that I just so happened to originate from. And I just remember thinking like I love the art of taking photographs and of capturing moments, any moments. And so I think that's where like my love of candid, in the moment documentary style photography came from. But then again, like that was 2011. I think that was the year I graduated high school. So I was fresh out of high school. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I was very much like, well, this is just a fun hobby. I'm going to work 3 jobs as a waitress and then work for my former stepdad and then do this and try to go to school and do all of the things in terms of like living as an adult
Yeah.
would, I guess, quote unquote. Got my own apartment, got, 2 freaking cats off Craigslist, like got an Alaskan Malamute in my studio apartment. I
Yeah.
was crazy. I was delusional. I was, seeing someone at the time who was also on an educational path of like, really smart guy. So like we're trying to figure out how to be adults. And in the midst of all of that, I was also going to church at my now what I reference as my cult church. And through being there, they had a photo video team, kind of like a creative team.
Yeah.
And I was working, just working regular jobs. Like I said, waitressing, doing all sorts of stuff, working for the painting and cleaning company, managing accounts, doing that. But at our church, we needed like a photo video team. So somewhere along the line, I switched career paths. I ended up in healthcare somehow. My grandma ended up getting really sick in 2017, so I quit my like former nanny job and decided to be my grandma's full-time caretaker and got into the healthcare field that way.
Mm-hmm.
And then like with everything else, I was just taking pictures at the church and experimenting that way. Mind you, any church service, it's so fucking dark. It's very
Yeah.
it's very different experience. So we're using, it was a Canon 5D Mark IV, I believe, that the church had purchased. So it was a
Nice.
nicer camera at the time with
Yeah.
like just a kit lens, I think, that came with the camera. And so I'm photographing these church services. I'm thinking I'm fucking the tits. I'm bomb. I'm
Oh,
like,
yeah.
goddamn, look at these pictures. I'm taking 1,000 photos of service, fucking 2-hour service, 500 pics an hour, just snapping them off. But that also goes into the culture of my church at the time because that was a huge component of it.
Yeah.
If you were on the photo team, like you were a very important person within the church structure.
Yeah.
Because the pastor would want to review all, and this is a culty thing, not a church thing. The pastor would review every single photo with you after, pick the ones that he liked where he felt he didn't look fat or have a gut or look crazy. And then we would post an album on the church Facebook page of like 500 photos from one service. 90% of them are him.
That's
and then
nuts.
the other 10% are of people crying at the altar, having super personal moments with God. And
Yeah.
our fucking photo team is in their faces with a camera. Yeah. So looking back, it was a really, interesting experience. But at the time, I was working in healthcare, and in 2021, when did the pandemic hit? 2021 was pandemic years. COVID hit, and my job was not affected because I did work in healthcare. However, I was furloughed quite a bit. Like
Yeah.
our rotation at the hospital was I would work 1 week on, and then I would have 4 weeks off.
Shit.
Because we had a small team, everybody would rotate their
Yeah.
time. So if there were 5 of us, I'd work 1 week on, and then somebody else would work the next week, and then so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Also at the same time, my big bad Alaskan Malamute unfortunately had a CCL tear, which is the dog equivalent of a human ACL tear.
Gotcha.
He is at the time 140 pounds.
Yeah.
He needed surgery.
Mhm.
Like small dogs, they get a little tear, they can live with it. So 2021, my dog needs surgery. I'm still doing pics at the church. So I'm being furloughed. I'm not making that much money.
Yeah.
And I got to pay for this because my poor dog can't move.
Yeah.
He's in so much pain. He's miserable. I felt horrible for him. He's huge.
Yeah.
So I get the idea of, well, let me borrow the church's camera and maybe just like do family photos or something. So I start out by just doing family photos. I open it up by saying, hey, I need to practice. I need to like get a little bit more practice doing outdoor photography. I'm only used to doing photos of people crying in a church, or of the pastor with his gut. So I start posting in different Facebook groups of how I'm hosting free photo shoots.
Yeah.
Just at random parks or whatever of couples or families, and reminding people that this is free.
Yeah.
So I can get experience and start a portfolio. And I started to really enjoy it. I thought of it as just a hobby at the time, or just a way to pay off my poor dog's surgery, which it did work because eventually I started charging for different styles of photography. So I did all my mini sessions. I got more experience with working with families, working with couples, just learning posing, learning a lot about the camera outside of its use in the church.
Yeah.
And just really gaining experience that way by offering free photos, and then being able to charge a very small amount as a starting photographer
Yeah.
and go from there. So I was never interested in weddings. Again, like I feel like many wedding photographers start out by not being interested in weddings whatsoever.
Yeah.
I thought it sounded horrific. I was like, this sounds awful. I'm not interested. But then I had somebody say, well, I'm hosting a wedding at the church. So they were getting married at the church that I was already going to,
Yeah.
was already comfortable taking pictures at. I had already started to gain experience doing photos outside of couples and, people. And I was learning a lot about style and
Yep.
what that looked like. And so I said yes, and I charged them $500 for a 6-hour wedding day.
Yeah.
And just overshot the shit out of it and I will say, gave them some fire flame fucking photos. Looking back at that wedding gallery, I think to myself, this is actually so impressive that this was my first wedding ever.
Yeah.
And I was really proud of myself for that. But I learned a lot along the way. I realized that that was one experience of doing a wedding in an environment that I'm very comfortable in.
Yeah.
And because I really enjoyed the experience, I also went the route of, well, now I'm going to shadow as many people as I possibly can, offer second shooting, tell them my experience, tell them my gear, show them some of my photographs, and see where it takes me.
Yep.
Mind you, at the same time, I'm still doing families. I'm still like, sticking my toe in the branding pond. And when I say branding, it's so different now. I approach branding so different now than I did back then. I look at some of that and I'm like, yeah, the photos are usable. They're not bad, but I just have such a different approach on everything now. But that's kind of how it all started, was just getting my toe in there and then really immersing myself. And I also was working full-time healthcare still while trying to build this sense of a business on the side. I did not have the background that you had with a like business experience necessarily, because I never truly worked a desk job where I was like doing business stuff. My jobs were always very interactive. So I did have a lot of people experience and people skills with like, just being around people on a regular basis, especially in healthcare. You're dealing with a lot of fragile people, a lot of sensitive situations and stuff. And
empathy is huge.
Yeah, empathy is huge. So it really built a lot of character within me to work, especially through COVID. That was a crazy, crazy time to work in healthcare, and just having that experience was very interesting. So I think that carried over a lot and helped a lot in terms of how I deal with people and approach people now. But one thing I will say is I did not have a back end business experience. And I had to learn as a photographer starting out, especially going from working and shooting weddings or families, or just being a photographer on the side and working full time. I had to learn a lot really quickly. And I think that's why it took me so long to actually make the leap from being part-time photographer to full-time photographer. And I think that's a lot of people's experience, because there's a lot of fear surrounding it. And it is still very scary to this day. And do I feel like I have found success within the things that I do and the services that I provide? Absolutely. And do I really love what I do? Absolutely. But as somebody who didn't have that business background, it was something that was really hard to teach myself, because it's not something that you just learn overnight, and YouTube University can only take you so far. And there's a lot of trial and error in this industry. And when you come from a background of, like me, say healthcare or nannying or working, at a restaurant, or being, working for a painting and cleaning company, like it's a very different experience than having to run your own books and keep track of things and track your receipts and all of your expenses and client communication, and making sure that you're tracking your emails and making sure that you're keeping records of everything. It's not just as easy as, hey, I'm going to pick up this fucking camera and shoot your wedding because I think I can take pretty pictures. There's a lot more on the back end of things that people don't read into or learn about before taking a full leap into, making their job an actual job, a business. So there was a lot that went into it, a lot of like processes of learning along the way. But, I'm really happy where this job has brought me, where my one 2011 DSLR camera, you know, has taken me 10 years later, because I am in a space now where I feel very confident in what I do and I love what I do. And that's, for me, beyond weddings. I love the branding photography side of things, and just looking back and thinking like, shit, that was a really fun time, you know, going to Ecuador as a teenager with my camera for the first time. And now I have the opportunity to really make money off of this and pour into people as much as they pour into me when it comes to this industry. And, you know, now opening a studio and doing a photography podcast, like there's so many different layers to things that it's a really beautiful kind of journey that it has taken, I think, both you and I on. And we're very fortunate to be in the positions that we are in. And I also want to remind people that's not everybody's journey.
Yeah.
And it's very different. This is not a linear thing where it's all just one straight up motion of, oh, now I did this, now I did this. Meg and I have cried many, many, many tears.
Oh, yeah.
About, you know, not just weddings or specific things, but like the job, the industry, and also the future, and what's that going to hold and what's that going to bring. So there are a lot of things that we could touch on, but that's kind of where I started in terms of everything.
Yeah. I have a question. Where did you, because if people don't already know, Nikki and I came together through someone. A mutual friend was like, you two would be fast friends, and they were very right about that. Shout out Elle. So I'm curious, Severina Studios.
Yep.
So shout out Elle, we love you. But I'm curious, how did you two cross paths?
Emma Mellon.
Gotcha.
Studios.
Okay, well, another shout out.
Yep,
Emma.
Shout out Emma Mellon Studios.
Emma did my very first website.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I remember she used to do that.
Yeah.
So I needed second shooters one season. Emma and Elle are significantly younger than you and I by like 10 years, maybe.
Yeah,
I think.
Babies.
So they were much younger. And that's another thing that we've talked about. Meg and I both started our photography businesses, I think, when we were each 28 years old or somewhere along those lines. And so Emma, I had posted in one of the groups needing a second photographer, and she was just looking for work, and we connected that way. And so then she hooked me up with Elle for second photography that I needed. And then, when Elle was working a wedding with me, she mentioned, oh my gosh, you would totally get along with Meg. And I was like, why? Literally, I was
Who's
like,
this bitch?
No, I was literally like, what makes you say that? And she kind of was like, you guys are just very similar. She's like, I don't know how to explain it, but you guys are very similar personality style. And I was like, oh, that's so interesting, because usually people with my personality I tend to not get along with because we're either like, I don't know. I think if I dated somebody like me,
space in the room for both of us.
No. Like, but that's why I think we do so well, because we're not fighting for attention. I am also somebody like, working with you, I find that I enjoy assisting you on wedding days, or I enjoy working with you in the sense that like, I don't need the recognition of like, oh, Nikki shot my wedding. Like, I'm okay being like, yeah, Meg shot the wedding and it was beautiful and Nikki assisted. Like, I'm not a recognition needing person.
Yeah.
There are certain fields and areas, I will say, that if my name is on something, I do want the rec. Like, this is funny because actually I mentioned this to Elle once and she was like, I can't see that. But public speaking is something that I really enjoy to like crowds.
Yeah.
Like I love public speaking to large groups of people on specific topics, and like just like motivational speaking, almost like encouragement or educational in some sense of just bettering yourself. And Elle was like, I wouldn't have taken you to be that way. And I'm like, bitch, listen.
I could see
sit down and listen to my TED Talk.
Yeah, I could 100% see you. I've submitted to do a TED Talk. Wells Fargo was like asking, they were like, hey, we're working with TED, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, we're looking for employees to give TED Talk. And I wrote up a whole proposal. I did not get chosen, but my TED Talk was going to be about how important it is that there is curriculum in schools for young children, not only I'm talking as early as like second grade,
Yep.
talking about very basic financial things up through high school. This whole like,
Just
oh,
literacy, financial
yeah,
literacy.
the accounting class in my high school was like, here's how to write a check.
I don't even think we had one.
It's so dumb, and we are setting people up for failure.
100%.
And I'm like, we need to talk about this. And I didn't get picked, and I was like, okay, well, that's convenient for, you know, just
Trying to keep the people poor.
yeah, trying to keep
the people financially illiterate.
But I get what you're saying, having that personality of you, because I think that with us, like, yes, we are insane, but I do
100%.
think we are extremely empathetic, and we're always
conscious.
Yes, we're
conscious.
Yes, we're always thinking about like other people and how they could be helped.
Yeah.
Even if it's just a talk, like we need to all be a little bit more educated on things that are going on. But you know, I get what you're saying.
Anyway,
so yeah,
that's it.
And that's how we came together.
And that's how the cookie crumbled.
Yeah. But I do agree with you wholeheartedly. Like nothing's linear. Everything is at everyone's pace.
Yeah.
But here's what I'll say. If you are listening to this right now, let's say you're part-time and you don't know if you want to go full-time, quit your job. My rule of thumb, and again, not saying this is right or wrong, but this is what your girl's going to say. If you are not getting bookings right now, just because you quit your job does not mean those will start.
Well, I'd be scared. I would. That's kind of a sign, like, don't quit your job.
Yeah. If you are having to turn down work because your job is getting in the way,
that's different.
To me, that is a signal that maybe it's time for the 9 to 5 to go. But if you are not where you want to be booking wise through no fault of your job, I don't think it's a great idea.
Nope.
And I know that some people are like, well, when you quit your job, you just have that extra energy and like you're going to give, look, being a small business owner, you have to have that energy whether or not it's working or not. Like you have to just go balls to the wall. So if you have to do your 9 to 5 and then your 5 to 9 is going hard on practicing, marketing, doing all of these stuff, then you know, you're getting bookings and maybe it's time to quit the job. But yeah, if they're not coming right now, I would stick with your job until, you know,
further notice.
Yeah, until the bookings are coming. But also know that this does take work.
And
this is going to take time, work, tears,
lots of effort,
a little bit of money. Like you don't have to have the top of the line gear, but you got to have a little bit of gear in your back pocket and learn from other people, but be respectful about it. Don't be in people's DMs getting cold calling, but also like getting mad at them that they're not responding to you. I've had people mean to me, strangers, who if I don't respond either quick enough or as detailed as enough as what they're wanting, they will like.
Also, you don't owe anyone anything. And that's what I think people don't understand is that, yes, we all start. And that's one of my favorite things to say is we all start somewhere. We're all at a different, in my starting point looks different than Meg's starting point, and Meg's starting point looks different than, you know, another photographer who starts at 20 years old and lives with their parents and doesn't have a ton of responsibility, or 18 years old and doesn't have that financial responsibility on their shoulders. Like everybody's starting point is very different. So don't get down on yourself for where you're starting from, and just understand that it is possible to get to where you want to be as a successful photographer. And we don't have all of the answers to everything, and the way that we do things might not be the way that works for somebody else, but it is possible to get there if you can take the time and put in the effort and the energy to figure out your systems, to figure out your flow, to figure out, you know, what works for you and for your clients and for the vendors that you work with, and stick with it and better yourself on a daily basis and continue to make it work.
Yeah.
And grow.
And the one thing that I'll say is there are plenty of days, even Riri says this, fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
Like, how do you show up when you're not confident? It's like, no, I show up and act like I'm confident. But the one thing that is hard to fake that I'm going to throw out to y'all, learn your fucking gear.
Yep.
Learn your camera gear. So yeah, you can get lucky with a couple photographs, but if couples are paying you thousands of dollars and you clearly, like, you don't really know what you're doing with your gear, that will come back to bite you in the ass quicker than you think it will.
Take a course.
Yeah, take a course, walk around. I used to walk around my neighborhood and just take pictures of like the dogs out in the yard, the trees, whatever, and just try to figure out, what am I doing?
What focal is, like everything. Literally, you got to fuck around with it. You have to. And don't use somebody's wedding day as your practicing point. Use unless you're shadowing,
If you're
truly shadowing, that's fine.
But as a second shooter, even if you're getting
No,
paid,
exactly.
it's not time for practice.
Yeah. So anyway, that's our journey.
That's our little stories. If you guys have more questions, let us know because we love to yap about all the things. But thank you so much for joining Cocktail Hour and sharing your day with us. I'm having a stroke, but we drop multiple episodes a week, Wednesdays and Fridays.
We be talking, we be releasing. Make sure you follow us on Instagram at cocktailhour.podcast. The link in our bio is where you can submit anything anonymously, all of your grievances, any questions, any stories, any hot takes. We want to hear from you because we will talk about it on this podcast.
Yeah, we love the content coming from you. Granted, we'll talk about anything, but
Truly,
we like a kickoff point. So thank you guys for joining, and we'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.